I try to think about, is that a texture that I want against my skin, or is it something that's more like an accessory, like a scarf over my clothing, or is it a blanket that's going, on my lap over my clothes?
Hello and welcome to the Yarn Over podcast. I'm Sarah-Jayne, your host, and today we're going to be talking to Ashleigh from Sewrella Yarn. I followed Ashleigh for a very long time and I absolutely love her work, her designs, which she very much used to do and has progressed into a whole nother business, still within the yarny realm, but she actually makes hand-dyed yarn. So we're going to find out a bit about Ashleigh, and then we're also going to be talking about how to use different fibres or select different fibres for particular projects. So grab a cup of tea and let's get stuck in.
I wanted to take a moment to introduce my brand new book, You Can Crochet with Bella Coco. This is a clear and simple course for the beginner and contains everything that you need to get started as an absolute beginner. It also serves as a handy reference guide for those who just want a quick catch up to brush up on their techniques. And it contains 12 gorgeous crochet patterns for you to complete. You Can Crochet with Bella Coco is available now.
So hello Ashleigh, welcome to the Yarn Over podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk today.
Yeah, I've been really excited about this because we touched a little bit about this before we came on, but we've spoken quite a few times over the years, haven't we? But never actually kind of face to face.
As close as we're going to get.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who might not know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. I'm Ashleigh and I own Sewrella Yarn as well as the Sewrella blog. So those of you who may have seen my YouTube channel or my blog posts from years ago, I started out in the yarn industry as a blogger, similar to Sarah-Jayne, by designing crochet patterns, making YouTube tutorials. I eventually got into knitting a little bit. But after doing that for about 3 or 4 years, I started to teach myself to dye my own yarn. I was creating a career for myself with crochet and knit designing, and I wanted a hobby again because my hobby had become my job. So I was interested in making my own yarn. And at first it was just supposed to be a hobby that was for fun for me. But because I had an online following that was interested in yarn too, I was sharing about my newfound hobby, and people took an interest in it. And I quickly figured out that I could dye yarn a lot faster than I could use it, because I could dye, 20 balls of yarn in a night, and I certainly couldn't crochet 20 balls of yarn in a night.
Yeah.
So then I decided to start selling my extra on the side. And then that eventually, now almost 5 years later, has turned into a big business with a studio and a dozen employees. And it's like taken over my life and has definitely become like my main source of focus now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing really, because I've followed you ever since those days where you were doing your blog and things. So I've kind of seen this evolution of what you've been doing, and I've just kind of sat back in absolute awe of what you do, because honestly, every time I see something that you put out there, I'm like, wow. Like, I just feel like you hit the mark every single time. I'm even looking at your wallpaper behind you, and I feel like that is very familiar to is it your crochet hooks? Is the hook case based on the wallpaper?
Yeah. I have a set I can show you. But yeah, we designed our own crochet hooks and knitting needle tools, and we needed cases for them. So we made cases that matched the wallpaper so that it all kind of goes together.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. Anybody who is listening, I'll leave a picture in the show notes because I love it. I actually have a set on order. They are somewhere between us right now. Postage Yeah, postage is ridiculous at the moment. So yeah, I'm hoping to get them very soon.
Oh,
But
I
I'm
can't
very
wait to receive
excited about those. They are gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
Um, I've kind of gone off on a tangent thinking about crochet hooks now. But yeah, everything that you do, I just think it always seems so very well thought out, so well put together, and just absolutely stunning as well. So well done to you.
Thank you so much for saying so. That's so kind of you. I mean, I definitely am very picky and choosy about what we carry in the shop. I try not to make it overwhelming, but I really feel like starting out in the yarn industry as a designer was really fun and, it allowed me to kind of get started in this industry and try a lot of different things out. But I really found like my creative strengths in running an actual yarn company. And
Yeah.
now I have a lot of help, creatively and on the like production side. So it's definitely, not just me. I have a lot of people to, bounce ideas off of and brainstorm. And a lot of it comes out of those like collaborative moments. So it's definitely been a crazy ride, but yeah, I'm really proud of where we are now.
Yeah, you should definitely be. And the studio looks amazing as well. I particularly like when you post on stories all the kind of behind the scene things,
Mhm.
because that stuff excites me anyway.
Yeah.
Because I'm a bit of a loser in that way. But I love like the spreadsheets that you do, and just to keep everything organized.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a lot of organization because there's so many colorways and so many different types of yarn, weights of yarn. There's all these different things we do like the hooks and like, we make our own wool wash and just all kinds of stuff. We carry candles now and snacks and like all kinds of stuff for crocheters and knitters. So it's definitely it takes a lot of organization to like keep all of that on track and organized.
Yeah. Are you naturally an organized person?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a little bit of a, control freak sometimes, which creates good results, in business, but it can
Yeah.
be a painful process sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like I have been very organized in the past, not so much in recent years. My life is very chaotic at the moment
Yeah, young
with
kids
like
can do
house
that.
renovations and children and business and all of that.
Yeah.
So if I can like just watch your stories and get that organizational fix, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to share because it makes me really happy to see things all color coded and organized.
Yeah. So you mentioned, you've now got this team of amazing people. Let's go back a little bit to when you first started to dye yarn. I know that you said that, your hobby became your work. So then
Mhm.
you needed another outlet to then, dye this yarn. What was the tipping point between selling those extras that you had to then starting the collections? And
Mhm.
what was your very first collection of yarn that you did? Can you remember?
Oh gosh. The first, like, cohesive collection that we did, I think, was a Disneyland-inspired one,
Yeah.
but we had been selling yarn at that point for probably over a year, and so I was, dyeing things to sell them at that point, but it was still just very random and not very organized, and it was just kind of like, "Well, this is just my fun thing, so, like, it doesn't need to be very professional or polished," because it was just, a side gig. So I didn't take it very seriously until we started doing collections, but I juggled both for a while. There was probably about a year where we were doing collections. I was still designing and publishing on my blog, working on YouTube, things like that, and I was trying to do it all, and that didn't go well.
Yeah.
Also, being a mom, I mean, I only had 1 child at the time, but, I couldn't do 2 full-time jobs and have a toddler, so
Yeah.
something had to give, and I was so passionate about the yarn business, and it was really starting to pick up some momentum, especially when the pandemic shut everything down. Home crafting, I don't know if you saw this result too, but home crafting really had like a surge of
Yes.
interest, And so we saw a lot of growth with the yarn business.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of took that as like, well, if this is, if people are interested in it, I might as well see how far I can go. And I'm still waiting to see if there's a stopping point, because we've just kept on going.
Yeah. Well, that is amazing. And yes, I definitely saw that. Everyone, even with my YouTube channel and things, the views just went, I think it was around March time, they just went whoosh straight up, because people had that time to discover new hobbies, which, it's lovely in a way. I mean, it was pretty horrific what we were all going through.
Yeah.
But it's nice that so many people actually started to crochet or knit during that time and have continued to do so.
Yeah, I feel like it gave people an opportunity to, discover those things they'd always had an interest in. There are so many people that I met and still meet that say, oh, I would love to learn to crochet one day, but it's one of those things that it's difficult to make the time for. So that's kind of the silver lining, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So along this journey then, I imagine you already knew a lot about yarn anyway, but when it came to like dyeing your own yarn, I imagine you learn a lot more. Is there anything that sticks out that's quite surprising that you learned as you went through this process?
Really just how different types of yarn can be. I mean, when I started out learning to crochet and knit, and then, working with different companies and doing designs, I was working with a lot of synthetic fibers like acrylic, polyester, things like that. Sometimes something with a little bit of wool in it, but I had never worked with completely 100% wool yarn. And I had this like preconceived notion that 100% wool was going to be like scratchy and uncomfortable. And why would you want to use that? And I was interested in learning to dye yarn, but in, even just the first little bit of research I did, it was like, oh, if you dye yarn, you're dyeing wool yarn. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I got to try out wool yarn. And then I was like, wait, this stuff is great. It's softer than synthetic fiber. It's easier to work with. It creates lovely fabric when you work it up. I just was like obsessed with the texture of it. And it goes beyond just wool. There's alpaca and cashmere and silk and all of these incredible fibers that were like completely new to me. So then being able to dye them and create colors that I couldn't find in a big box store, if I wanted a purple, I was kind of limited to bright purple and dark purple, but now I can create any purple I want and make the colors a bit more sophisticated and a little bit more, I don't know, just different than what's in a big box store. And then the fiber content being so much more luxurious is definitely a treat. So I didn't know what was out there really. And now that the way that I can customize it makes it really fun.
Yeah. And do you have to treat them in different ways when you're dyeing the yarn?
Based on the fiber content? Yeah, so the way that we dye yarn, it only applies to animal fiber. So we do a yarn that has a silk component to it, but it's like 50% silk and 50% wool. And what's being dyed with our processes is the wool part of that yarn, and silk is remaining undyed. So it gives it a cool effect. But like I couldn't dye synthetic fibers or 100% plant-based fibers with our processes because they only work on animal fibers.
Yeah. And you do different weights as well, don't you? You offer different weights of yarn.
Just about every weight, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite?
Oh, I mean, they're all different in terms of dyeing. Like every one, even if we follow the exact same recipe, but using different weights of yarn, they all look different. So for that reason, I would have to say fingering weight is probably my favorite as far as like how it takes the dye because of it's so much less dense than other weights. And so it really allows the dye to like move around and be more blended. But as far as working with them, I probably would say DK because it's a little faster.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I get that so much. I actually lean towards like Aran weight.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I
Or
don't blame
chunky.
you. Yeah, bulky, super bulky.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Have you seen my brand new pattern, the patchwork blanket? This project is perfect if you want to use up some of your yarn in your stash, explore new stitches and techniques, and also learn new skills. So many people have picked up this pattern already and begun their projects, and if you want to too, you can head across to bellacococrochet.com/patchwork-blanket. That's bellacococrochet.com/patchwork-blanket.
So out of all of the I guess you would call them shades, colors. What would you call them? Shades?
We call them colorways.
Colorways, of course.
Mhm.
Do you have like a particular favorite that sticks out to you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, we've made hundreds of colorways at this point. It's so difficult to say because depending on the time of year
Yeah,
or my mood or what I'm making,
yeah,
there's some colorways that I love because they're really bright and really energetic looking, but I wouldn't necessarily make a sweater in that yarn. I would
yeah.
probably pick an accessory or something a little bit smaller scale. Um,
Hmm.
but I think all of our in stock tonal palettes are most of my favorites, and that's why we bring them back every year.
Yeah,
Just because I feel like they connect so well to the season and they're so versatile. You can use any of them for any project and they're going to look good. So I just love that it can work for anybody in any situation that likes to make anything.
yeah, yeah. I get that. I always swoon over, like, I tend to lean towards the pinks and purples.
Yeah.
Like the Disney collection for me was just stunning. I can't remember which one I got actually. Was it Cinderella? Is it Cinderella's Castle?
There was a Sleeping Beauty's castle, but I think you got Fantasyland, if I remember
Yes.
correctly.
Yes. And then I bought some more. I accidentally ordered mohair.
Mhm.
I have never used mohair before. And this kind of links to a question that I get asked a lot is, do you have any kind of suggested yarns to use for particular projects? Because I get asked this question all the time.
Mhm.
I feel like it's definitely something that I could learn more about because I haven't explored as much as I could have done in order to answer the question. So do you have any tips on that?
For choosing yarn,
Based on
depending
the
on
project. So if it's
yeah.
a blanket, for example, what fiber or weight might you lean towards, or a jumper or a cardigan, for example?
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
what would you make with mohair?
Well, mohair I love for garments, so sweaters, cardigans, things like that. The texture of it is really, really nice against the skin. So,
Yeah,
what I try to think about in terms of like the texture of a yarn, which, the fiber content is going to inform the texture, right? So, I try to think about, is that a texture that I want against my skin, or is it something that's more like an accessory, like a scarf over my clothing, or is it a blanket that's going, on my lap over my clothes, that type of
yeah,
thing. The other thing to think about is durability. So if you're using or if you're making, let's say, a blanket that's probably going to get, tossed around a bit, it's going to have some friction going, over the lap, or maybe the kids are using the blanket, meaning anything goes. That thing needs to be durable. Maybe, we're having a coffee and it spills and we need to throw it in the wash.
yeah,
So, especially for blankets and like very highly used items, I try to lean toward either something that's in a heavier weight, so it's going to have a bit more strength to it.
yeah,
So, worsted, Aran, bulky, or something that has a little bit of a stronger fiber. So, we have a few yarns that we make that are nylon blends. And anytime that you see nylon in a yarn, it's there for durability. So,
yeah,
there are sock yarns that have nylon in them, which are great for knitting or crocheting socks because, there's a lot of friction going on on your
yes.
you need that durability. And then, other items that are used all the time too.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you say think about where it's going to sit, if it's on the skin or if it's on your clothing. That's a really good point. I think, you know, it's just one of those questions that you get over and over again, especially if you're new to crochet, and you have leaned towards those you know, synthetic fibers, that when it comes to the others, people can just be a bit like, oh, where do I start?
There's a lot of choices out there too, and it can be overwhelming. So I would say definitely for people that are brand new to hand-dyed yarn or higher end types of yarn, if you're used to synthetic fibers, a lot of those yarns come in like worsted weight is something that we see all the time with synthetic fibers. So what I would suggest is trying out a different type of yarn, but still do worsted weight because that's what you're used to and comfortable with.
Yeah.
A really versatile yarn. That's why all the big companies make so much worsted. It's because you get a lot of yardage in, you know, per skein or per ball, and you can use it for anything. So I would start there and see what you think and how you feel, and then you can experiment, you know, try new things, but working within your comfort zone is definitely an easy way to get going.
Yeah, it's a great tip. You mentioned, or you touched on earlier, that along with your yarns, you also do like the teas and the wool wash. Is that just something that you kind of thought, oh, this will be fun, and then it's become a thing, hasn't it? And like everyone's like, oh, what's it going to be with, you know, all these different things? I think tea and yarn is just genius, really.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, really, this whole business was for fun, you know, in the beginning. And I added in some of those things way before it was like my career, you know. So I was just kind of experimenting and was like, what would I want, you know, to shop for? What would I want to complete my, you know, experience of knitting and crochet? Because for me, I have so little free time now, and
Yeah.
when I do, I want to like fully enjoy it. I want to make every like last minute of that time really count and really relax and, you know, really treat myself because it is such, you know, limited, precious time. So that's what I've tried to create for our audience too, and give them the tools and, you know, the resources to be able to just come to one shop and be able to get everything that they need to have the best experience possible with that time that they have.
Yeah, and really feel like when they're using it, it's just like really special for them.
Yeah.
I think that's really nice.
Yeah.
So what have you got coming up for, I would say, the rest of the year, but we're nearly at the end now.
Yeah.
So what have you got coming up, I guess, for 2023?
Yeah, so we have a big year ahead of us. It's going to be our 5th year anniversary of the yarn business. So we're celebrating in a very big way. We always do, usually on January 1st every year, we'll do what we call our greatest hits collection, which is just a collection where we bring back all the best sellers from the previous year so that everyone has kind of one more chance to get those colorways and market items, because when we do collections, we only do them once and we take pre-orders and then that closes until some of it returns for greatest hits. So that's typically our kind of system. But this year being our 5th anniversary, we're doing a year of greatest hits. So there will be monthly, what we're calling playlists of colorways. So we're going to revisit, I think, 50 or more colorways throughout the year from our entire archive from the last 5 years. So there will be things like the Fantasyland colorway that you got years ago will be included at some point, and we'll kind of try to create little color palettes that work together even though they weren't originally launched together. So I think it's going to be really fun and a great way to revisit all of the, you know, all the memories, walk down memory lane.
Yeah. Absolutely. And for those who have already like purchased previously, I bet they'll be straight on getting some more of that yarn.
Yeah. We
Because
hear
it's
a lot.
so, yeah, it's nice when you find something that you are just so in love with, and you know, you're given that opportunity to get it again. That sounds really exciting. And
Yeah.
congratulations on 5 years.
Thank you.
That really is amazing. Like I say, I just remember, you know, you dye yarn in your garage, wasn't it? And then the move to the studios and then into the next space. It's just, do you think you're going to need to move again soon?
We've been already on the hunt for the next space for a little while now.
Yeah.
It probably still, I would love to say will happen next year, but right now, our area, the town where we live, is like just growing like crazy. There's a lot of tech companies that are moving here. Like they're putting a new like Apple campus and a Google campus and all these
Wow.
crazy things in our little town in North Carolina. So there's all of this like competition for commercial space.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit of a challenge, but yeah, we're outgrowing our current space for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting though, and
It is.
absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So can you tell everybody where they can find you? So if they've not seen you before, you need to go straight away, look at all of Ashleigh's things, because, you know, in case you didn't know, I think they're amazing. So where can everyone find you?
On Instagram, that's where we do all of our updates. Everything that's coming up or is currently available will be posted there. And that's at Sewrella Yarn, Sewrella Yarn. And then our website is sewrellayarn.com. And that has everything that's available now and in stock, as well as it'll have information about what's coming soon.
Amazing. I'll leave all of that in the show notes so people can go and check it out. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really lovely to chat to you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
It was. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.